Okay, welcome to your first video on descriptive statistics. Now, obviously you should now have read the article and upload your definitions of the different descriptive statistics to Padlet. This first video is going to show you how to perform both an average and a standard deviation using Excel. We're going to be using two stats packages over the next 13 weeks, one being Excel and one being SPSS. To perform this first test, you're going to have a set of data which you'll find through Canvas. It should be in the link. If anyone has any problems, please email me as soon as possible. Okay, you're not going to have this set of data. This is one I've just knocked up now. You'll have a different one just so you don't get the answers straight away. Now, as you already know, the average from your definitions is essentially a score that represents the entire group. Okay, so if I wanted to compare all of the 100-meter sprint times between Group A and Group B, it'd be very difficult for me to look at each of these numbers and do it individually. Okay, and then give kind of a general overall view, a descriptive statistic of each of these groups. It's very easy for me to calculate one number that represents each of these groups using an average score. Now, I'm sure you've heard of averages from school, but I'm going to show you how to do it in Excel anyways. So the first thing you're going to want to do is highlight in a column or in a cell what this number means. Okay, so in here I'm going to write average. In the next cell you're going to have to enter the equation. Now the equation is very simple: equals average. Okay, you can either click that, right, and open the bracket. Okay, and all I need to do there is highlight the column of numbers, close the bracket and push enter. To get the average for group B, you can either do the exact same process, or a quick solution is just to drag in the bottom right hand corner across. Okay, now what I like to do, just to highlight where my descriptive stats are for any data set, is to highlight them in a yellow color. You can do whatever you want. Okay, so this is my first descriptive statistic. Very easy to do. Alright, and it's telling me, okay, one number that represents each of these groups. Alright, so based on the average, Group A was faster than Group B over 100 meters. Group A was 12.5345 and Group B was 13.9291. Now that's all well and good, okay, but unfortunately the average is only kind of part of what I want to look at. Okay, there could be outliers within this set of data. Alright, so for example, in Group A we've all got fairly low scores until we get to, okay, person 10 or cell 10 here, alright, of 24.1. Now that's obviously a very slow 100-meter time, and it could represent that something's wrong with our data set. Now we'll look at outliers in a different lesson, but for today, alright, we're gonna kind of just use it and just use the data as it is. What I want to know using the next descriptive statistic or standard deviation is how accurate each of these averages are. Okay, so I'm going to use my standard deviation. Okay, so STDEV. Standard deviation is basically going to tell me how accurate each of these averages are. The higher the standard deviation, the less accurate the average. And obviously we want the average to be very accurate. The problem is, in data sets we could have outliers that we can't see. Obviously that one is a fairly obvious one, 24.1, but in other data sets where we're working with smaller numbers, it might not be so obvious. So standard deviation is a really good way of us trying to find out whether something's wrong or how accurate this average is. And again, the calculation is really simple, so highlight it any way you want. So I'll put my standard deviation there. The equation is equals STDEV. Okay, open your bracket, and again just highlight the exact same data as you did for your average. Do not highlight the average itself. Okay, close the bracket and push enter. Again, you can do the same process with Group B or just drag it across. Okay, now what I can see here, again I like to highlight this, not usually in yellow, normally in a green colour, but again you can do whatever you want. Okay, and put a box around just for niceness. What I can see here is that I have a lower standard deviation, okay, in Group A than in Group B. Okay, this low standard deviation here, although only slight, right, tells me that this average 12.5345 for Group A is more accurate than Group B. Okay, now because there's not a lot of difference, it doesn't really matter. Okay, but if this standard deviation was something like 1 and this standard deviation was 16, this would mean that this data set was completely wrong, but this was very accurate. So it's something to be aware of moving forward. And again, we'll talk about this in next couple of lessons. But just for today, I want you to get used to actually performing the equation and doing it correctly. So what I want you to go away now and do is, using your data set that you have provided for you, I want you to do an average and standard deviation, okay, and submit your calculation through the link that is in on your module. Okay, so have a go and submit your work once you've done it.